Good afternoon. I'm Shari McMinn, and I'm speaking today to you from my farm in rural northeastern Colorado, which is in the Rocky Mountain region of the United States. You may be in a completely different part of the world, perhaps Canada or Australia, or maybe you farm in Arkansas or California. But I want to welcome you to Her Rural Heart and my presentation called The Nuts and Bolts of Homeschooling. I have made this presentation to groups of homeschoolers in Colorado who attend an introductory workshop put on by Christian Home Educators of Colorado. I work for them part-time and I also volunteer. And one of my volunteer teaching jobs is to present this 2-hour workshop several times a year to anywhere from 20 to 220 homeschool parents who come to learn about homeschooling. If you have just started homeschooling or you are considering it now because of the coronavirus stay-at-home orders, I hope that this will encourage you. If you've been homeschooling for a while, maybe it'll help you refocus and refresh your vision for homeschooling and why you do it. So I think it's a presentation that's applicable to many people, and I'll get started. So first, I want to let you know that this is called Nuts and Bolts, the practical how-to of homeschooling. I have some credentials. I wouldn't say they're a bunch of college degrees, but I have been homeschooling my own children for some 27 years. I have 11 children that are aged all the way up to 39, and my youngest at home is now 16. So I have a 16, a 17, and an 18-year-old I'm homeschooling, and then I'm going to be done. Hooray! In 2.5 years. So it's a great lifestyle for us. We started when we lived in the urban area of Denver, Colorado, and my son, who's now 33, was having some struggles in school, and I laughingly say that a public school principal told me and my husband that we should consider this new thing called homeschooling. So we did, and at that point in time, there was very few resources available. There were a few books written by John Holt and a couple other people, and there had been a homeschooling audio broadcast on Focus on the Family with Dr. Raymond Moore and his wife that a lot of people had listened to and got interested in homeschooling. So a little bit about me is I am raising the youngest of my 11 children. My 5 youngest children were adopted through child welfare, and I'm now homeschooling as a single parent because my awesome husband passed away just coming up on 7 years ago, and we were completely devastated. We were shocked, and yet God had put into place just a lot of things for our family so we could continue on. And one of the things is that we were able to just keep homeschooling. And my adult children are the fruit of that, and they're just all doing very well in diverse careers. And my 3 youngest at home have goals that they are working toward. One wants to go into criminal justice, the other one wants to go into the Navy to become a SEAL, and another would like to go into law enforcement, but first go into the Army. And so anyway, we're doing great. So I do things besides homeschooling. I'm a writer and an editor and a public speaker. I've written several what I would call self-help style nonfiction books, one on 5 generations of a Christian family, one on adoption, a cookbook that I wrote that has a lot of great frugal recipes for large families and for meal sharing. If you prepare meals for yourself and then share leftovers with other people in your community, it's a great cookbook, very colorful. And one of my sons, who's a homeschool graduate, did all the typesetting and the graphic design and helped me get it published. And we're working on another one together. And we have a couple more, hopefully we'll do next year and the following year. I am a research junkie. I am often reading a book or reading articles on the internet. And I would say, an expert by experience in the areas of agriculture. We have a small family farm, child development and nutrition, marriage and family life, politics, and popular culture items and history are all things I like to study. And obviously, I'm a follower and servant of Jesus. I've been a Christian probably since I was 8 years old. And like all people, sometimes we kind of get a little wayward, and I did in college. But then I came back to the Lord, and I can attest that because He's my Savior and friend, that's why I am thriving in my life despite some real tragic hardships. I also like to travel, and I especially love going to the beach and to ports that have neat museums and ancient walkways, and I do like to snorkel and deep sea fish. So that's pretty good for an old farm wife, right? I was very happily married to my husband, Kerry. He was an architect, and we met when I was a commercial interior designer, and we worked together and enjoyed working together. And then it blossomed into more than that. And we eventually got married and had a home business of our own that was an architecture and design business. He also taught college, and about, I would say, maybe 20 years into our marriage, maybe not that long, maybe 15 years into our marriage, we decided to purchase and buy an old fixer-upper farm and move our family out of the city. And when we did that, then we were able to adopt more kids. And so I live on a 240-acre, primarily pasture grassland farm. And in the past, we've raised every kind of livestock for direct meat sales. We've downsized a little bit right now, and but we love the lifestyle. So anyway, my husband's, when he passed away, the morning that I found him, his Bible was out on our kitchen table, and this verse was marked, and I cling to this because I believe in it, and probably the last thing he read. Only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for consider what great things he has done for you. And that's found in 1 Samuel 12:24, and that's what I do for my life. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about the following items: how to prepare your home for homeschooling, how to prepare your child, how to prioritize your time, how to schedule your day, how to choose your curriculum, how to enjoy your homeschool journey with your family. And remember that great change and associated success does not happen overnight, but by small steps every day through the years. And I should mention that this is going to be a two-part video recording. I'll record for an hour, and then I'll take a break because it's exhausting to video record. And then I'll come back and I'll do the second half. Other topics that we're going to briefly cover throughout the afternoon include marriage and family life, middle and high school, preschool and early years, preventing burnout, record keeping, schedules, the role of fathers, single parent homeschooling, struggling learners, and support groups. And by the way, I have a PowerPoint that I'm following along as I do this, so you might see me pause to click to the next screen. So first of all, I want to share with you what I think are the ingredients of a successful homeschool. And this list was agreed upon by several other ladies who also taught this. And we just continue on with this list because we think it's really good. So first of all, prayer and a personal relationship with Christ. That really sets the stage for everything, especially in my life. And then to have a biblical vision. So some people like the verse to train up a child. Some people like New Testament verses. Whatever it is, I do think it's good to have a vision that husbands and wives decide on together that's rooted in Scripture. One of the hard things about being a homeschool parent is you have to have parental humility, and you also have to be teachable. So just like your children, you need to come to every school day with a humble heart and be ready to learn some things yourself. I think discipline and encouragement are really important in your home. And by discipline, I don't mean corporal punishment. I mean a disciplined routine of what's expected, and then to constantly encourage each other. I think you need to have structure, but also be flexible. And that's the fine line, isn't it? To have a goal and a routine. And if coronavirus or something else hits, oh well, you're just going to go to plan B. And you definitely learn that with homeschooling. Then you need to have marriage and family unity. If you're having marital problems, I suggest that you lovingly and patiently work on that more than anything else, because you and your spouse, in this case your husband, need to be on the same page. I had a marriage just like everybody else. It was great, and then it was also not so great. And my husband and I learned to be patient with each other, and I wouldn't say we ever learned to communicate really well, but I did learn when I should keep my mouth shut, and a few times he did too. So anyway, marriage and family unity, and you definitely want your children to be on board, and you want to be able to have glad times with them, that they will look fondly upon their childhood, that it was idyllic and they loved homeschooling. You need to have effective child training. If your kids are out of control and you think, I could never homeschool my kids because they're total brats, well, guess what? Your first lesson is for you, and you need to be teachable and find some good resources on child training, because it is our job to civilize our children. We don't want to just raise them and shove them off on the rest of society. We want to train them up so that we enjoy being with them, and that they are brothers and sisters of ours in Christ as adults. You need to have a somewhat organized home, and this is where, if I'm teaching live, I say, okay, who's a messy? Raise your hand. And there's always a few people that do, and then other people, when they say that, other people raise their hands and they do too. So I think all of us, truth be told, can be messy. If you only saw the pile of laundry in my bedroom right now that needs to be hung up, you would know that sometimes I'm a messy too, and that's okay. And certainly your car is messy if you have kids. So you just need to come up with some home organization tips, and we're going to talk about that. And then parental willingness to be sanctified. As Christians, we are to have a life of sanctification. That means to become more like Christ every moment, every day for the rest of our lives. And we cannot do that in our own ability. God has to do that in us. And so we trust in Christ, and we study God's word, and we ask the Holy Spirit to be present in our lives and our homes. And then every day we're sanctified and hopefully grow closer to the Lord, and become more like Christ, and especially as a role model for our children. If you do not currently have family devotions, or what some people call family worship, I really encourage you to build this into part of your homeschool. For many, many years, my husband led family worship at our meal table, or sometimes we did it in the living room after supper, and we would read scripture and discuss it and sing a hymn or two. And although I can honestly say that my kids weren't really into it, we did it. And if nothing else, it helped my husband and I. And now that he has passed on, we do not gather for family devotions anymore. We certainly go to church together. We pray at the meal table regularly, every meal, and more than just, God is great, God is good, thank you for the food. We try to pray, real prayers, like please bless somebody because they're sick, or please help the dad of another family find a job, that kind of a thing. And then my kids, because they're all teenagers, they have their own Bible devotion in the morning, working through different books. Right now, they're reading through Experiencing God by the Blackabees. And then I always try to read my Bible, at least a chapter a day. And I don't do it every day, but it's my priority to do every day. And then I want to conclude this list of the ingredients of successful homeschools by saying that teaching, which is effectively geared toward individual learning styles, individual and family interests, and a vision for faith, work, and lifelong learning is an important key ingredient. Note that I did not list that I want all my children to make a perfect score on the SAT and go to Harvard. Now, that may happen, but it's really more about building relationships and discipling our children, just as Jesus discipled what we now call the apostles, but back then they were called the disciples. And he just trained them every day, spent time with them, taught them, and that's what homeschooling is about for us as well. So the first topic we're going to talk about is to prepare your home. Now, when I first started homeschooling, we lived in a 900 square foot house, and there were 6 of us, and it was tight quarters, but it was totally doable. And actually, there was less to clean that way. We did have a very nice fenced backyard, and we had a lovely neighborhood that we lived in with other friendly people and big trees, and we could take nature walks when they were up at 7 in the morning or after dinner to wear them out some more. And now I have a fairly spacious farmhouse with a basement that's fully finished and an upstairs, and of course 240 acres. So there's lots of room. And if my kids are just all hovering right next to me, I'm like, go find one of the 240 acres and do something. So to prepare your home, here's some helpful hints. First of all, determine the space you will use for teaching. If your home is small, school can happen in any and every room. Utilize walls, floors, ceilings, and tabletops for maps, arts, and charts. A real clever thing I saw one time is somebody painted the risers on their staircase with math facts. So as they went up and down the stairs, they could memorize the math facts. Consider a toy system and organize your school supplies. Declutter your home. Have a yard sale for school expenses. Simplify your existing housekeeping systems like laundry, meals, and cleaning. You know, in the old days, housewives did a particular task each day of the week. So they might bake bread on Monday and do all the wash on Tuesday and hang it up to dry on Wednesday and sweep and clean the house on Thursday. And that's not actually a bad idea because it gives some routine to your life and makes sure that all the necessary tasks get done. Set up a home management binder or phone notes or other easy to use system and post whatever system you choose in a central place so that your family members can see it too. The joke in my family is that I always had our daily schedule and our budget posted on the side of the refrigerator. And about every 3 months, my husband would come to me and say, "What are we doing today? And can I have such and such amount of money to go buy such and such a thing?" And I'd say, "Well, the schedule is right there and the budget is right there. You look and see what you think." And he did that up until the week he died. So, you know, sometimes the most difficult student in homeschool is dad, but he's so worth being patient for, right? Include your children in the management of your home by establishing a chore system and change jobs each month and keep the chart posted. So in our home, when we had basically all the kids at home, we had teenagers and we had young kids. So I would pair one of the teenagers with one of the younger kids, and maybe that month they were supposed to clean the downstairs bathroom, or they were supposed to vacuum the living room and the upstairs floors, sweep them out because we have wood floors. And so the older child learned to master their job by teaching the younger child. And when I first taught the kids or the teams of kids a new cleaning chore, I would show them how to do it. And then the following week, I would do it with them. And because we do chores once a week at our house. And then the next week, they did it on their own. And I came and checked their work and corrected what they had missed. And then the fourth week in the month, I would see if they did everything right. And if they did, terrific. If not, I'd point out the last few things. And then the next month, somebody else would take over that job and I do the same thing. But now my kids are totally savvy about cleaning and organizing the house, and they do it all on their own. And we generally try to do it Thursday night because that's a time when we're not doing other things. But sometimes it slides till Saturday afternoon, and that's okay. But I put it on them. They need to discuss with each other when it's going to get done, as long as it's done by Sunday night. So wives, I want you to take your role of managers seriously and invest in it. And I hope that you'll talk to your husbands about blessing you as you do that and to offer services to you for some of the things that they can do. So, my husband was always in charge of everything that was outside the house. So, the vehicles, the barns, the yard, all of that. And then I was always in charge of what was inside the house. So the cleaning, the cooking, the kids. But my husband was great about helping with the kids, especially at the end of the day when I was really tired. He would go take them outside, get them worn out, then they'd come back in for dinner, and then he would play games with them, read to them, tuck them in bed, that kind of a thing. So please talk to your husbands about how they can team with you so you don't burn out. Because if you try to do everything yourself, you'll burn out, and it'll probably only take about a month before you wish that school bus was going to come pick up your kids. So, during Corona quarantine, you don't have much of a choice. So I'd say talk to your spouse and figure it out now. I think it's important to have one shelf or one area in your home where all the school supplies are organized. Now, if your kids are going to be doing schoolwork in their bedroom, which I think is totally fine when the kids are older, but when they're younger, they should do it like at the kitchen table or in the living room, somewhere where you're at so you can closely supervise and help them. So what I did was I would always have the younger kids sit with me in the morning at the kitchen table, and we had a shelving unit right there where they had their bins that had their little workbooks and crayons and things like that, and that's just where they were. Then, as everybody got older and we moved to our farm, we had more room. We have a nice large living room with a table, and it's like a big library table. And we have bookshelves there, and everybody has a bin on the shelf with all their books. And as your kids get older, they'll have more books and supplies. And so each person knows which shelf is theirs, and I have a shelf too. And everything is corralled. So it's not left out overnight. It's put away before dinner or at the end of the project or whenever. And sometimes we'll have a project that maybe we're working on all week, and that can stay out. But the idea is that homeschooling does not take over the other areas of your life, like sitting and relaxing in the living room to watch TV or read a book together, or playing cards at the living room table, or eating lunch. And sometimes, if we have stuff going on at the kitchen table related to school, we'll have lunch outside if it's warm enough. So having extra tables is a good thing. And as far as younger kids and toys, when our kids got older, their things that were for their personal use were kept in their room. And sometimes they shared a room with someone else, or sometimes they just had a room all to themselves. That's one of the perks of being a teenager in our family, is once you get to that age, we have 8 bedrooms, so you can have your own room, and you can shut the door and keep people out, and hopefully people won't come in and steal your stuff. So if you have a communal play area where younger kids are playing because you're helping your older kids with their school, then have some sort of a system where you have bins or a shelving unit, or maybe trunks and big lidded bins that have costumes and Legos and things like that in them. And teach your children to get out one set of items, play with that for as long as they want, and then put it away before they get the next thing out. And to me, that is something that has become more important to me as I age. I just don't like that clutter. And when my kids were little, we lived in a small house, and when they got 2 or 3 things out, it was just a nightmare. You couldn't find the puzzle pieces. You were stepping on Legos barefooted, which is the worst, isn't it? And there were all kinds of things mixed up in the costume tub, and it was just a mess. And I am not a neat freak, and I'm not obsessive compulsive, but I do like things to be organized so that when somebody's looking for something, they can find it. And so if you walk into our house, you would see that, the floor does not have stuff all over it. Now, when my kids were little, and my husband he taught college for a long time. He would be gone all day. We'd do homeschool, and then at 5 o'clock, because he was going to be home at 5:30, we'd have everybody pick up the house, and I would set the table for dinner. Even if I hadn't started dinner, it looked like I had started dinner. That was my mom's tip. At least set the table. Um, and if you have storage area where the kids know certain things go in certain areas, then they can very quickly pick up the house. And when your husband comes in from haying or a town job or whatever, he's not stressed by a messy house. And then he can relax a little bit, give him some time to himself, and then hopefully he'll want to engage with the kids. And I just think that if there's a little bit of structure and routine, that everybody does better. So I just encourage you to have some kind of, like, put all the plastic dinosaurs in one bin, and put all the Hot Wheels cars in another bin, and all the dolls and their clothes in another area. And that way, and train your kids from the time they're little. When they're 2, they can help pick up. And if you teach them, then they'll know how to do it. One of the teaching methods that I've come to appreciate as I've aged is the Montessori method, because it does teach kids that things should be kept and respected in a certain place. And then when you want to do something with it, then you get it out, you enjoy it, and then you put it back. And a real good book that I recommend is The Montessori Toddler by Simone Davies. And it's really about teaching your children when they're little, so that by the time they're in elementary school, it'll just be a no-brainer for them. Okay, now we're going to talk about prepare your home with routines. So you will have a new routine with homeschooling, and you sort of have a coronavirus routine right now, right? And that might be not very good. So I think to have an expected routine is important. And when we adopted children, it was very important to them that they knew when the next meal was being served. When were they going to eat again? And where was their room where they were going to sleep, and what time were they going to go to bed, because they had been in the foster care system and with their dysfunctional birth parents, and there was no routine. So it was a really good reminder to me of how important it is to have a routine for parents and for children. And if your kids can get used to a routine while they're young, then they'll own it when they're teenagers, and they will go on to their adulthood knowing that there's an expected get up time and meal time and work time and play time, and they won't have issues with showing up late for work or getting fired because they didn't show up for work. So with a new routine with homeschooling, what you want to do is figure out a daily routine to achieve the amount of school hours that is mandated in your state in the US, or if you live in Canada, Australia, what does your government mandate? So in Colorado, we have a very reasonable law that was drafted and thankfully got approved by our legislature, that was put together by HSLDA. And it said that you can get done in homeschool in 4 hours what it takes an institutional school to accomplish in 6. So I just have always structured our day so that we have 4 hours of actual school time. And that can include a lot of different things besides just book work. So when my children were younger, creative play was part of that. So I helped them with their math and their reading and their handwriting. And we did a lot of coloring in Dover and Bellerophon are publishing companies that have really good historic coloring books. And my children really like those because they could color a picture and then I could read the story to them, or once they were able to read, they could read it for themselves. And that was a good way to practice their penmanship before actually opening their print or manuscript penmanship book. And coloring allows your right and left brain to cross the midline and talk to each other. And so it's a really, really good skill. And a lot of the skills that we're losing in modern day for toddlers and preschoolers, because they're immediately given an electronic device, is they don't know how to use scissors, they don't know how to paste things, and they don't spend a lot of time coloring. And all those are super important for future learning. So I would help them with those for about an hour. Then we'd go outside and take a nature walk, maybe collect some leaves or something, come back in, look at those, look at books that had pictures and maybe describe what we saw. Maybe we read about a coyote, or we needed to learn more about a bush that we found and what the leaf looked like. And then we do a little bit more book work, and then they could have what we called imagination station. They could go into the living room and they could play with a lot of different make pretend things. They could build tents with blankets and pillows. They could do Legos. They could listen to audiobooks. And that was 2 more hours of learning that they did, while I spent 2 hours helping the next older group of kids with their English and math and so forth. So figure out how you're going to get in the time that you need. And it can include, like on our farm, it always includes livestock chores, because that is a real skill and it's a team builder. And it's the pits when you have to go out and it's snowing or pouring down rain, but those animals need to be fed. So it's a real character builder. Then I want you to figure out a weekly routine to achieve the chores related to home management. So chores can be considered part of school, like under the category life skills or personal development, but they should not be the majority of your schooling. You still need to teach the 3 R's, and I think a well-rounded education includes good literature, science, history, geology, government, that kind of thing. Start your new household routine a week or two of starting your new school year. So if you just jumped into homeschooling right now because of COVID-19, well, this can be your practice week. So get started and start your new year just adding 1 or 2 subjects at a time until you've accomplished your full routine at the end of the month. So the first week, maybe you're just going to say, okay, guys, we got to get the house organized. So let's go through and make piles of trash, piles for the Goodwill or the thrift store or the charity box, and then things that we're going to just box up because we're not using, but we're going to put them in storage. And let's just get the house organized, and let's clear off this bookshelf, and we're going to put our school supplies on this. And maybe you need to order some school supplies on Amazon because you can't get out to go buy them, and that's okay too. So anyway, get yourself organized, and then maybe you're just going to add English this first week. So you're going to do penmanship, maybe vocabulary, writing, and certainly reading. And kids should be taught to read, but they also can be read to, or they can read to you. And that's a really good skill to develop, is actually reading out loud. And they can also, of course, listen to audiobooks, either on, we still have a cassette player, if anybody knows what that is, but we have CDs. And then I also have a subscription to Audible, and I use that for myself. So anyway, so start your new school year with the first week just having one subject. And then the second week, maybe you add in math and science. And then the third week, maybe you add in history. And the fourth week, you put in geography or whatever. And of course, Bible is an important subject, so figure out how you're going to do that starting with the first week. Allow for breaks in your school routine to prevent burnout. And that's for you and your kids. because what's the saying? All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and it makes mom upset. So, um, allow for breaks and plan them. So in the evenings, that was always kind of a little bit of my downtime because my husband was with the kids after getting home from work. And then on weekends, I always enjoyed Saturday morning cooking, and I I just enjoy cooking. And so that's what time I did. All the kids slept in. Well, not the little ones. They would come out and help me. But the older ones, the teenagers, they always want to sleep in till noon if they didn't have a job to go to. And then you need to talk about if you're going to have a Sabbath day. And I didn't always appreciate that, but I do now. On Sunday, we said nobody should be doing paying work and nobody should be doing chores unless it's a hobby that you like. So I like to garden and cook on Sundays. And we have several artists in our family. Other kids like music. Some of our kids go ride horses. So we go to church, although we're not right now because of Corona, but we go to church and we come back and we have a meal together and then we just try to relax. And some people take a nap, some people read, some people watch a movie. But the idea is that you're recharging your battery because you're relaxed. And then I think it's important to have a couple times a year some kind of a family getaway, whether it's on the weekend or whether it's a week-long vacation. And there's inexpensive ways to do that. I think it's super hard when you farm and how are you going to take a vacation, especially if you're a dairy farmer? God bless you, dairy farmers, because that cow has to be milked every day. So in the past, some of us have stayed home and others have gone on a trip. I've had one of my adult children take care of the farm, so me and the younger kids and my husband could travel. And we also have hired young men and women to come and stay at our farm who live in town, but they like the idea of farming, and so they want to come and learn how to do that. And usually by the time the week's over, they're glad they live in the city because, it takes time to gather the eggs and feed the livestock, make sure the water tanks are filled up. So anyway, I do think it's important. And looking back, my adult children, the things they remember the most are our family vacations. So I just really encourage you to figure out a way that you can do that. Okay, prepare your home with record keeping. So in Colorado, we have to keep records, and it mostly involves vaccinations and attendance and test scores. And so I say do what the law says, but keep it as simple as possible so that you won't blow it off because you really want to stay on it so that if the end of the school year comes, you're like, I don't remember what days we did school. That's not a good thing. So I just have a calendar on the wall, and every Monday through Friday, from what we call Labor Day to Memorial Day. So that's basically the beginning of September to the end of May. We do school Monday through Friday. And maybe the calendar says that we went to the dentist or we took a field trip to somewhere or we went to go visit relatives. We still did school. That was because it's part of school. All of those things are part of school. The other thing I do is I have my kids take attendance for themselves by dating and writing their signature name on every page of their work. So that if somebody ever came to me and said, I don't think your kids are doing school every day, I can say, well, just look in the math workbooks. They're dated every day. So it's like dealing with your taxes. You always want to tell the truth and you want to do it right. And that way, if anybody asks you, you have no problem. So I assume that we school 4 hours a day for 172 days a year. That's what our Colorado USA law says we have to do at a minimum. And so my calendar and my kids' work are the attendance. And then we do Labor Day to Memorial Day, and we do take 2 weeks off at Christmas, and we take a week at spring break. Although what we do, celebrating holidays and family traditions, or going on a cruise on spring break, which we can afford now. We couldn't in the early days, but those are all learning things. So you figure out what works for you and then you stick with it. And then some areas, they have what's called umbrella schools or private or independent homeschools that you can belong to, and they just keep all the records for you. So kind of check that out. Um, then, as far as grading and testing, I'm going to shock you by saying I do not grade and test my kids until they're in high school. I know, as a 62-year-old woman who's homeschooled a bunch of kids, what kids should know at what level. And if they're behind, they're behind. We just keep working hard on it. If they're ahead, they're ahead. Great, let them soar. And I do give out end of the year grades in high school because I want to create a transcript in case any of them wants to go to college. And but I keep it pretty minimal because I know what they should be at. And if your state or nation requires testing, then you can just, look on HSLDA or your state organization and find out what those are. And usually standardized tests, your kids would just do really good on. Homeschool students are ahead of the 50% on those. I do check my younger kids' work daily. In fact, I do it with them. But if they're to the point where I say, okay, now you can, do this thing on your own, then I make sure they did it. And then by the time they're teenagers and they work in their room, they have to have their bedroom door open so I can walk by and make sure they're working and not on their cell phone, which sometimes I do bust them. Um, and I check them once a month. Sometimes, if I have one that I don't really trust that they've been doing it, then I check it every week. Otherwise, I check it a month. And they, by high school, learn to schedule their work. I tab all their workbooks so they know what they're supposed to do in September, October, November. I have a sheet that lists out. But I don't do daily lesson plans because that's just not my style. So, anyway. Okay, then we're going to talk about scheduling your day. So, again, have a schedule centrally located on a bulletin board or refrigerator so that everybody knows what is expected. So, we have 5 days a week and 24 hours in a day that we need to sleep 8 to 10 hours, eat 3 meals a day plus snack. And this plus snack is really important to my kids. And truth be told, to me too, if we have ice cream or brownies in the house. And we do school a minimum of 4 hours a day, and then we have other chores and work, and then we have time to relax, refresh, and reconnect. So that's 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Now, your schedule may be different if you work weekends or nights or whatever, but this just works for me. And then one day a week, we need to do other work, chores, and errands. So that's what I would call Saturday. If I have to go to town to get something, I can do that, or big house cleaning chores, or if I need to paint a room or something. And then one day a week should be our Sabbath rest. So I just really encourage you. My husband at one point got mad at me because I was doing laundry on Sunday. He said, even the washer and dryer need to rest. Get out of there. I said, okay, well, how am I going to get it all done? He said, well, I'll help you do more in the week. I said, okay, fine. So you choose what days of the week you're going to school, what order that you do these different things, and you choose what, where, and when works best for your family. You can homeschool in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, or night segments. And one of the great blessings of homeschooling is that you set the schedule for your family. Homeschool, again, for the minimum required time. So 172 days in Colorado, 4 hours a day. And probably we do more like 175 for 6 hours a day. And we also do our county fair in the summer. And so that's even more time. So I know that we're way meeting the minimum. All right. So if you feel like you need help with home management, and just knowing how to get everything done, there's a couple really good resources I'm going to recommend right now if you've got something to write with. So the first one is called Managers of Their Homes, and that's written by Terry Maxwell, Maxwell, and they have a ministry called Titus 2. They're based out of Kansas City, Kansas or Missouri, I'm not sure which state. But they are a long time homeschooling family. All their kids are grown. All their kids work with them in their ministry. and both a husband and wife write a lot of neat books, but she has super good binders with chore charts. And I mean, just if you were not raised by a good homemaking mom, she can be your homemaking mom to teach you how to do it. Then another good book, which isn't as much of a resource book as Managers of Homes are, but it's just a good book to read, is written by a homeschooling mom, Amber Fox, and it's called The Homeschooling Housewife. And I was a beta reader on this book, and it's just easy to read, engaging, funny, and super practical. So again, that's The Homeschooling Housewife by Amber Fox, and then Managers of Their Homes by Terry Maxwell. So the important thing is you determine a daily schedule, you post it, and you stick to it as a goal. Allow for flexibility because issues do come up, such as pregnancy or a death in the family or coronavirus, and you just need to be flexible. Then you need to schedule regular school, regular chores, regular cleaning. So get that word regular in there, right? And assign tasks to children to be your helpers. Have the older work with the younger and train them yourself for 2 weeks in a row. And for the next 2 weeks, they show you their work and you correct it. And after that, they're on their own with your occasional reminders. There's also some good online sources you could check out. A real popular one for many years has been flylady.com, like a housefly, flylady.com, and then donnayoung.org, and then one called the homeschoolmom.com /gettingorganized/. So again, that's donnayoung.org and flylady.com and the homeschoolmom.com /gettingorganized/. All right, so an example of our day, and I wouldn't say this is exactly what we do now. This was more when I had more kids at home, including younger kids. So at 7:30 or 8, and this actually is true, I still get up at 7:30 or 8, and I have coffee with a Bible devotion. And of course, I check Facebook and email, and I make breakfast. And then at 8:30, the kids get up and they come out and eat breakfast. And then they get their room straightened up, get dressed, go feed livestock, and by 9:30 to 10, they are on their schoolwork. And their schoolwork at this point in time consists of textbooks that they read through, a little bit of online learning. They practice their piano lessons, things like that. And then I go in and I get some office work done. As a single mom, I have to do that. Now, if I still had young kids at home and my husband, then I would be helping the younger kids at this time, and he'd be working to pay the bills. So then the kids are on their individual schoolwork, either in the living room or in their own rooms, and they break for when they need help. They come out to the kitchen table, and I do help all of them with math at this point. Math always seems to be the stickler, so I'm happy to help with fractions and division and pre-algebra and whatever it takes. So, and then if there were younger kids, they'd be done by 11, and so then they can do their imagination station. And they can also help me get lunch ready, and we eat lunch around 12:30, and we just have discussion. Sometimes in the old days, we did family devotion with my husband. Now we just pray and talk about the events of the day, maybe what's going to happen, what's on the political radar, that kind of thing. And then they go outside and get some exercise. My one son actually heads to work. He works at a feed store, and it's considered an essential business. So he still, thankfully, is earning money, which is great. And he's a 17-year-old super energetic teenage guy, so it's good to lift all those heavy feed bags. But the girls can take a walk up to the mailbox with me, or be on the trampoline doing something outside. Maybe they'll go, be with their livestock, be with the dogs, that kind of thing. And then when I still had younger kids at home, then we would do a group lesson in a block method. So like on Monday, we might have history. Tuesday science. Wednesday we'd run into town for errands and call that consumer choices. Thursday we might do foreign language, and Friday we do art. So that's how we did their block classes until my youngest kids were all in high school. Now they just continue finishing their schoolwork during the afternoon. And then, excuse me, I'm going to itch my nose. Then at 3 o'clock, people have free time and they are expected to be productive. And if they want to get on a screen, they can do that. But there is a 2 hour screen limit in our house. So if they're going to be on their phone at 3 o'clock, then they don't get to watch a movie in the evening. So anyway, the idea is that hopefully they're in their free time, they're relaxing together, they're working on hobbies, they're enjoying being outside, that kind of a thing. And then we have supper around 6 or 7. Again, we sit and enjoy being together. And then we might do something afterwards, like play board games, something like that. And then by 10 o'clock, they're to have their lights out. I usually go to bed at 9 and watch a movie, so my light's out around 11. So I'm the last one to go to sleep and the first one to get up, but that's okay. I like my job. I think it's important to have a routine and systems, but it's really important not to get caught up in them so that you forget your relationship with Christ and your family, because they are the reason that you chose to begin homeschooling and the reasons to stick with it through the years. Okay, so some people say, well, I've got several children, how do I make this work? So for individual learning, I suggest you help each child go through their workbooks one-on-one for English and math at their individual levels. And if they're young kids, they shouldn't be doing it for more than about 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And you finish with one, and then maybe that one can go outside and jump rope or be on the trampoline or play in the living room, and then you help the next one and you just rotate them out. And then if you need to go back to the first one because there's some more, then you just do that. But it's just back and forth. If you have kids that are working at the same level, they can both sit with you at the same time. And this is particularly true when you have a boy who is, they're a little, what do I want to say? They're a little reluctant about book learning, whereas girls just love books. So maybe you have an 8-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl, and they might be in the same workbooks. So then you just work with both of them at the same time. I suggest that this kind of one-on-one work is scheduled in the morning when everybody's fresh, they've just had breakfast, maybe they've played outside a little bit to get the wiggles out, and then they come and you just work with them one-on-one or one-on-two. And then for group learning, after lunch, then you can enjoy PE with them. I mean, I loved it when we had a whole bunch of kids. We had enough for a soccer team and baseball, and now there's not as many, but we can still play it outside if at all possible. And I mean, like, if it's snowing, put on snow clothes and go out. If it's raining, use an umbrella, but get outside and get some fresh air. Then the group block lessons, those are good to do in the afternoon, especially if you have little kids that take naps. And when your toddlers give up their nap time, I want you to teach them to have quiet time. And my adult children still give me a hard time. We hated quiet time. I'm like, that's okay. It saved my sanity. So if kids are younger than school age and they just can't sit in a group learning environment, and they've given up their nap time, then they need to stay on their bed, because they might be in a shared room, stay on their bed playing with a bucket or a bin of toys that is only for quiet time. So they don't get to play with it any other time. And that makes it special, and it makes them willing to do it. And it takes a couple weeks to get them into the routine of this, but you can do it. I know you can. And you make them stay on their bed for an hour. And if you set a clock or an alarm or something, or you come in and get them, but train them to stay on their bed, and it will save your sanity, because you do have to work with older kids and they need your time. It's valuable to them. So then you can help the older kids in the afternoon, and once the older kids start doing their own textbooks for science and different things, then you don't have to have group lessons. But my kids always like doing group stuff together. They like doing science experiments or looking at maps or different things. And when we got to the point where we weren't going to do it anymore, they're kind of bummed about it. So we play board games and take walks and stuff like that instead. And anyway, so I really recommend that kind of block class in the afternoon while your little ones are sleeping. You should, to most effectively teach each child, you should focus on setting days and times to do school, just like an institutional school does, but make it work for your schedule. I think kids need to know that by 10 o'clock in the morning, they're working on schoolwork. They can't just sleep until 11. That's for Saturday, or that's for the summer. Students getting their work finished before they relax and enjoy perks. And so I do say no screens till 3 o'clock in the afternoon and no snacks until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So then you have a little bit of a reward when you got done. Help the oldest first, then the others will come along. So if you get your oldest child to really buy into homeschooling, and you might have to do extra special things to make that happen, the younger ones will just see it and they'll think that's what they're supposed to do and they'll do it too. Get a routine accomplished daily. And there's some days where it's just going to all fall apart, and that's okay. Just go out, go to the park. Well, you can't in COVID, but go outside and play together as a family, take a walk, whatever you can do with 6-foot social distancing, and come back in and have ice cream and watch a movie and just start over the next day. Enjoy teaching so that your students are enjoying their learning. You know, I can count on my hands the number of wonderful, loving, terrific teachers I had in public school. Mrs. Sherman was my 7th grade biology teacher. She was wonderful. Mr. Loudermilk was my wonderful math teacher. Mr. Curl, I had in elementary school. They were so wonderful, and they made learning enjoyable because they loved teaching. And then I can also count the horrible teachers I had, and most of them were English teachers. Mrs. Snerenberger, and isn't that a horrible name? I hope none of your names Snerenberger. And she looked like that. She was just like an old crabby lady. And then we had Mr. Jensen, who was a total communist high school English teacher. And in front of the whole class, he totally disparaged my family by saying that my parents had 5 kids just so they could have all the tax deductions. So your kids will remember if you're a good teacher or not. And mostly they won't care if you're good at it. They'll just remember that you enjoyed it. And mix up the learning with hands-on activities or outdoor exercise breaks. Avoid leaving home every day. Avoid interrupting school with appointments. We won't be doing that now, will we? Don't have too many commitments outside of homeschooling. So sports and other things where you are in the car every afternoon, isn't it great during coronavirus? We don't have to do that. Please just pick one activity, maybe for the oldest one, and don't do more than that. And limit your own use of technology. I am not going to go through choosing curriculum because it's a really long session, but the main thing is you can look online and just Google homeschool curriculum. You could even go to christianbookdistributors.com and look at homeschool books and look at the inside, ask friends, borrow from people. If at some point in time you can go to a used curriculum sale, I would definitely recommend you do that. But just ask what other homeschoolers do and think about the season of life you're in, your budget, your child's developmental stage, their learning style, which you could Google, learning styles, and your teaching style, and you can also engine search that to learn more. And then Kathy Duffy has a tremendous book I highly recommend. Right now her version is called 102 Top Picks. And if you will just engine search Kathy Duffy, it will come up. She has a big website and she reviews every possible curriculum. So that's the place I recommend. Kathy Duffy's, and it's Kathy with a C, Duffy's 102 Top Picks. Definitely consider your Christian beliefs and looking at things from a Christian worldview. And don't spend a lot of money at first on curriculum. Make sure you kind of try it out, see if you like it. And learning styles include visual, which is seeing, auditory, which is hearing, and kinesthetic, which is moving. So if your kid is bored with a textbook, probably visual is not their gift. probably doing something with their body is, or auditory hearing, like if they love audiobooks, that's a clue. Learning styles are not an indication of intelligence. Okay, then the last thing in the first hour of this that I want to talk about is special needs and struggling students. And if you have an issue with this, I'm going to give you my email later on, and you email to ask me about it. But I think homeschooling is a tremendous blessing for these kids. And I really, really suggest that you can do it. And there's help available, especially on the HSLDA website, which I'll give you later. And then I want you to think of teaching outside the box. So some of the things that my kids did with my husband especially were that they made outfits and attended Civil War balls. They worked on construction projects on our farm. My two older daughters and my husband went on a mission trip together and did a site survey of an orphanage. And we visited our relatives a lot, especially my mother-in-law before she passed away. I had a daughter who went on a people-to-people trip to Australia. I had kids that showed animals. They all played piano and did recitals. My girls all sewed beautiful outfits. These are all things that are beyond the curriculum book. So if you're just starting out with your kids, you're going to have to deschool them a little bit and go over what your expectations of the school day include. And you can definitely homeschool preschoolers. And, everything you do with your preschool is homeschooling. It's counting, it's working together, it's going to town when you get to go on errands, it's being outside, and, just being with them is great school for them. We talked about essential chore charts. I think that's really good. And we also need to think about Bible-based training, and I'm going to give you some resources for that in a few minutes. And I'm just going to go ahead and end this video now, and then I'll start part 2 here shortly. Thank you so much.